The Daily Mail, 11th of August, 2022. Emmanuel Macron sails into hot water. The president is branded an eco-hypocrite for roaring around the French Riviera on a gas-guzzling jet ski after telling citizens to save energy. Or what about Prince Harry on his way to a charity polo event? Dan Wootton of GB News says, "We're being preached to by someone like that eco-hypocrite in chief, Prince Harry, who takes an electric car to take him to a private plane, which makes absolutely no sense. And then, in a gas-guzzling big car, his polo kit. And folk like him have the cheek to tell us to stop traveling. Well, I'm not going to listen to folk like him anymore. I'm not going to listen to folk like him anymore." And why should we? Why should we listen to hypocrites like that trying to tell us what to do? But for that matter, why should you sit here and listen to me? Because it seems I'm a hypocrite too. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I found myself standing at the checkout of a supermarket with a trolley full of the family's weekly shopping. I was wearing my anti-slavery t-shirt, my fair trade jeans, bamboo socks, and even organic cotton pants. And likewise, among the things I was buying were organic and fair trade goods. But there were other things in there too. And as I stood there in line, my eyes drifting around my groceries, I saw mouthwash, batteries, chocolate cookies. And it occurred to me there were several products there I'd never thought to question before. No idea how they were made, how many slaves were involved in their production, how many trees cut down, how much carbon emitted. And as I stood there looking down at these items, now being scanned through the checkout, and the logos and labels on my ethical clothing, I wondered, am I a hypocrite? Perhaps you thought the same. According to polling data from the UK Office for National Statistics, nearly 3/4 of us are worried about the impacts of climate change. And yet, we know that most of us have either eaten meat or been on a plane in the past year, both highly carbon intensive and largely discretionary activities. I've done both of those things. So it seems at some level, we're all hypocrites. And if we are all hypocrites, well, we shouldn't have an issue with the hypocrisy of others. That would be hypocritical. But we do, don't we? So let's talk about what's really going on here, how your hypocrisy can set you free, and how it can help us all to safeguard our future. Now, if I were to ask if anyone here thought we should throw more plastic into the ocean, cut down more rainforest, enslave more people, I think you would say no. At least, I very much hope you would say no. Because we do care, don't we? We care about these things. But how much we care, well, that varies a lot, and how willing we are to act. That depends, of course, on the issue itself, but also on whether we know what to do, how hard it is to change, and whether or not we see the consequences of our decision. Those factors drive our inconsistencies. I imagine if I had a petition here calling for greater protection for orangutans, a lot of you would sign it. But I wonder how many of those signatories would know if their pensions or savings were invested in the companies that contribute to deforestation. We get so worked up about hypocrisy because it feels unfair, inauthentic, and we're hardwired to look out for those things. The injustice of somebody trying to present themselves as better than us, trick us, or take advantage over us. Who does he think he is? She's got some nerve. Trying to tell me? So we're sensitive to hypocrisy, and for good reason. But there is more at play here. Last month, my friend Simon went for his annual health check. A comprehensive assessment from blood tests to breathing whilst running hard on a treadmill. And at the end of it, the doctor said in his final summary, "Simon, you're in pretty good health, but you need to lose some weight." And Simon had the very natural, very human reaction that instead of accepting the considered evidence-based view of a medical professional, Simon left the clinic thinking, well, at least I'm not as fat as the doctor. So here's the problem. We've become too familiar with using hypocrisy to dismiss things we don't want to hear, and too afraid of our own hypocrisy to look into the gaps between what we say and what we do. Last week, I went into a London coffee shop. The hipster barista, with his tattooed arms, waxed quiff, and leather apron, made me a beautiful-looking, delicious cup of Brazilian coffee from a gleaming, hissing machine whose sounds blended with Joni Mitchell playing softly in the background. I walked out past the exposed brickwork walls, the mismatched wooden furniture, and into the sunshine. I felt relaxed, or I even took a sip. That was the story of my coffee. The story they told, and the story I chose to believe. Because the other story isn't so nice. The story of the environmental destruction of the plantation, the worn hands of the forced labor that picked the beans, the carbon emissions of the transportation. I choose to believe the first story because it protects me from the second. Now, these countless tales of hypocrisy that apply to us all are magnified and multiplied in the corporate context. Here is a statement from the website of a large company. You can find statements like this on corporate websites all over the internet. We have a zero-tolerance approach to all forms of slavery and human trafficking. They go on to say, no evidence of modern slavery was found in our operations or supply chain. Now, it strikes me that for a company with a zero-tolerance approach, they can't have looked too hard. We could probably find the products of slavery here in this room, let alone in the supply chain of an international company. But to look harder would have led them to an uncomfortable problem. It is much easier not to look too hard. In my experience, contradictions like that are really not the result of devious directors in the boardroom trying to deceive anyone. They're the product of complex organizations that hide from their hypocrisy because they don't know how to deal with it. Corporations hide from their hypocrisy just as we here in this room hide from ours. But there is a better way for them and for us. Hypocrisy stops us listening to people. The threat of hypocrisy stops us speaking out for what we believe. And the denial of our own hypocrisy makes us contort our views to justify our actions. In the gift shop at the zoo, the eyes of my then 3-year-old son locked onto a plastic toy snake. It was the end of the day. I wanted to get home, and this might not end well. Daddy, I want this. Oh. Please, can I have it? No, it's cheap plastic tap that will end up in the bin. But it's yellow, he said with his sad eyes looking up at me. It would go against my values to buy it. But then, in my head, 2 quick somersaults. He's tired, I need to get him home. And the zoo would get some money from this, which I suppose is a good cause. And so, in a classic moment of what psychologists would call cognitive dissonance, I traded my beliefs for convenience, and I bought it. It was broken before we even got home. There was really no need to try and deceive myself that I was doing it for a good cause. I could have been honest about my motivations, recognized my hypocrisy. But in that moment, I didn't own my hypocrisy. It owned me. I want us and organizations to recognize their hypocrisy and own their decisions. Because when we own our decisions, we become empowered to change them. And we own a share of the problem. And that makes change faster and focused on the things that matter. Imagine the freedom of truly knowing I own my decisions. There is a gap between what I say and what I do, but it is an informed choice, a conscious choice. It is my choice. To do that, though, demands curiosity. If we're to create the forward movement we need, we haven't got time to indulge in willful ignorance. We can't always choose to believe the comfortable story. We have to want to see the world as it really is. And so, if what's in your shopping trolley doesn't reflect what you believe about the world, change it. If you don't like the carbon emissions associated with your lifestyle, change it. If you don't like the impacts and ethics of the companies that profit from the money you spend, change it. You own your decision. And the first step is to break free from the fear of hypocrisy that keeps our choices hidden from us. So I want the word hypocrite to ring an alarm bell for you. The next time you use it to dismiss someone's argument, stop and think, is there really another, more uncomfortable reason why you don't want to hear what they have to say? So as far as Emmanuel Macron goes on his jet ski, or Prince Harry in his private plane, I know nothing of how much they actually care. But if they're saying things that help us move forward faster, then I want to listen. And when you see a gap between the things you care about and the choices you make, don't rationalize it away. Don't make an excuse for it. Embrace the gap. Use it to drive your actions. Then own your decisions. Thank you.